Hello viewers, welcome to this session on climate change and human health part 2. I introduce myself as Dr. Sushmita Bhaskar from the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies, the discipline of Environmental Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. So in our previous lecture, we have discussed about the impacts of climate change on human health and the latest IPCC report and how we need to focus on the emissions and also go on to the net zero emissions. We also saw a little bit of the linkages of the human health and the weather, also the extreme infectious diseases which are actually spread, the emerging infectious diseases, all that are spread due to extreme temperature fluctuations. It could be due to the heat, it could be due to rainfall, extreme temperature variations, climate variability and so on. Now in this session, let us see the different types of the viral diseases, the vector-borne diseases, like amoebic dysentery, which is a protozoan disease and so on. We will discuss all these in detail. Objectives. After reading this module, you should be able to describe the linkages between extreme weather events and human health, explain the impact of climate, infectious diseases and human health. Climate change affects on health and well-being. So we have already seen that for health, a very good environment is important. All the factors, a holistic approach is very important to good health and living even to a long and healthy and active life. So environmental factors play a very important role. So climate change has already affected the human health and major concerns are the extreme weather events such as heat waves, cold spells, the monsoons, the floods and the windstorms. Taking steps to tackle the root causes of climate change, understand the health co-benefits of action, invest in healthy environments and advocate the health related developments. This is vital in order to reduce the burden of disease and to promote population. Some weather events are likely to increase or become even more frequent, more widespread and intense during the 21st century according to the IPCC report 2021. Many health impacts, they can be prevented by early warning systems, public health preparedness and response action. The human beings are presently exposed to climate change through the changing weather patterns, changes in the water quality, the air quality, the food quality, agricultural patterns, the livelihoods and the infrastructure. All these direct as well as the indirect exposures, they can result in a variety of the health impacts. Now this is the figure showing the human brain and the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is central, which is regulating our temperature. So it acts like a thermostat. It balances the salt concentrations, the body fluids and several other involuntary functions such as breathing, digestion, beating of our heart and so on. So hypothalamus is very important. So transfer of heat from the body. This occurs through sweating, convection and radiation. When the temperature in the surrounding and the body skin temperature, it is the same, approximately 35 to 37 degree, then no radiant heat loss or gain occurs. But when the body becomes hot, the hypothalamus and the nervous system, they direct the sweat glands to draw the water from the dermis, that is the innermost layer of the skin. Thereby it causes an evaporative action and cooling on the skin's surface. Higher temperatures and heat, this can cause heat stress in human beings and also in the animals. Recently you would have seen in the news, that is in 2021 in Rajasthan, due to the drought, you can see animals and the Gujarat also, the animals actually they have died over there, the cattle. So these extreme temperatures of rainfall, of extreme heat, these can affect the human populations and also the animal populations. Industrialization, urbanization, especially in the developing world, this is giving way to increasing the urban heat island effects. So our body's internal thermal regulatory mechanism or the thermostat, that helps to maintain a constant temperature by increasing the production of sweat and it supplies more blood to the skin. This increases the rate of heat loss to balance the heat burden. In extreme heat conditions or the hot conditions, the rate of the heat gain is more than the rate of heat loss. As a result, our body temperature rises or increases. This in turn can result in various health disorders. So you would have seen, like when there is extreme heat, People can complain of dizziness, of heat stroke. So sometimes people even keep glucose and other sachets in their pockets to combat this heat stress and other dehydration activities. So high heat exposures, they can result in exhaustion, in fatigue, in dehydration and also heat stroke. So heat stroke, it can fatally affect the very elderly and also the young children who are even the school going children, they can be affected. Heat stress has also an influence on our mental health. So you can have the brain fogginess, it has an impact on the psychological and also on our mental health. Mood swings, psychological disorders, disturbed sleep patterns, extreme heat can also result in irritability and lack of concentration to do our normal work. Heat stress can also cause certain diseases such as heat edema. Edema itself means when there is a water buildup. So this heat edema can result in the swelling of the ankles. Heat rash, this normally many of us would have experienced. There are small red spots which are occurring on certain parts of the body, and that will bring about a prickly sensation, and we also can use certain prickly heat agents like powders or the cooling soap bars and moisturizers to combat the same. It also occurs due to the inflammation to the sweat glands. Heat cramp, this is caused as pain in the muscles due to the salt imbalance. Heat exhaustion, this is caused due to excessive sweating, and it can lead to dizziness, weakness, eye disorders, intense thirst, nausea, headache, vomiting and diarrhea. It can also result in muscle cramps, breathlessness, palpitations. Sometimes you feel that your heart is palpitating very fast. So arrhythmia, and also tingling and numbness of the hands and feet. So heat can cause a variety of the physical ailments in human beings. Heat syncope, this is caused due to the insufficient amount of the blood that is flowing to the brain. That will also result in dizziness and fainting. Then heat stroke, which we already discussed, which occurs at temperatures above 41 degrees, and they can lead to several problems, and it can also be fatal in the very elderly and the younger children. Kidney diseases, so when you are exposed to high and extended periods of the heat exposure, then the kidney can be affected. So in the rhabdomyolysis is one of the kidney symptom and disease which results from the heat stroke, and it has been linked to long-term renal disease. The same way infections of the kidney and the urinary bladder, they are also intense during the heat condition, and it will also impair the body's water regulating ability. Pollen allergies. In some cases you might have seen, like when you go near a farm or a park, you may have some kind of an irritation on your skin, or you tend to sneeze. So people have the pollen allergy. So these allergies due to the pollen, they could also be the Parthenium weeds and their pollen. They could be allergic, and they could thrive more in the warm temperatures and in summer seasons. So they cause various skin ailments, asthma and also nasal congestion in some cases. Cardiovascular diseases. So warmer temperatures can spiral the rate of the cardiovascular disease, and people are affected by stroke and also dysrhythmia. Extreme weather events. Therefore, the changing climate can bring about extreme weather events, and it is expected that even the speed of hurricanes will increase by 11% at the end of the 21st century. The total rainfall is also expected to increase by 30% and above. Some regions may also experience drought. So such unprecedented extreme weather events, they can result in flooding, in water contamination, declining crop yield, destruction in the natural resources and much more. They can have wide range of implications for the human populations. Human health risk due to extreme weather events. Let us go on to the foodborne diseases. Significant crop destruction and reduced nutritional content of the food has been observed by scientists. The farms are infested with bugs and the aphids. So this is due to the unsustainable practices that the farmers are using, which is reducing the nutrition of the crop yield, and the use of more the pesticides and the chemicals to the farm applications, and also it is reported that aflatoxin is also linked to the global warming. Extreme rainfall and diseases. We have seen that 51% of the waterborne outbreaks are due to extreme rainfall and the diseases that are occurring. Infectious pathogens, these serve as a breeding ground for the infectious pathogens, and they contaminate the water reserves. So microorganisms can cause diseases such as typhoid, cholera, schistosomiasis, amoebic dysentery, giardiasis and gastrointestinal problems. Way back in the 1970s, when people had to travel to foreign countries, especially the United Kingdom and so on, people had to take, and when we were going from the Asian countries, people had to take a dose of the cholera vaccine and only then they would be let in there. So these are very infectious disease, and cholera was life threatening, and therefore vaccines were actually used in order to control and contain these diseases. Therefore virus also, they can spread during rainfall and they can make people ill. Floods can also destroy homes of people. It can also displace millions of people from their establishments. Amoebic dysentery. So this is a protozoan dysentery, protozoan disease, and it is known as amoebiasis. It is caused by the single-celled parasite Entamoeba histolytica. The protozoan parasite infests and destroys the cells of the colon, and it can cause bloody diarrhea, which is diarrhea that is filled with the blood and mucus, and liver abscess. So this disease mostly occurs after contamination of the water bodies and in areas with poor sanitation. With proper sanitation and water treatment, the disease can be well controlled. Cholera. This is an infectious disease caused by Vibrio cholerae, and it thrives in aquatic environments. The symptoms include severe watery diarrhea for days, severe dehydration, vomiting, fever, and it can also lead to death. So it was reported to be spreading in vulnerable regions of the world due to the increase in severe heat waves and more frequent and intense flooding. Haiti. In 2010 earthquake that occurred in Haiti, there was sudden surge in the cholera outbreaks ever since. Countries where there is a high population, poor water sanitation, where there is a crowding living condition, where there are overcrowded living conditions, are mostly vulnerable. A team of investigators from the University of Maryland in the United States observed that cholera is more during the periods of excessive rainfall and in higher air temperatures. Extreme cold events and diseases. So now that we have discussed about the extreme heat events, we go on to cold. So some regions are experiencing extreme chillness and cold, and that have also increased due to the climate variability. Extreme precipitation such as snowfall, they can cause frostbite, asthma, rhinorrhea, pneumonia, influenza, norovirus, psoriasis, cold urticaria, carpal tunnel syndrome, tensosynovitis, the myocardial infarction, and heart diseases. Cloud cover impacts frontal passage and sunshine. So these epidemics can be related to the frontal passage. Donley, a scientist in 1975, he observed that there was a large outbreak of influenza cases in Germany, in Norway, and in Switzerland that occurred simultaneously with the influx of cold air that occurred over the northern and western Europe. So these outbreaks in Europe, this most frequently occurred in the cold months between January and March, when the cold air mass most commonly intruded over the area. Now we would also have seen, during the very cold months and during severe cold, people complain of migraine, of the sinusitis, and so on. So there is a relationship of migraine, of sinus attacks, and rapid changes in the barometric pressure. There is a relationship between these. A decrease in sunshine, such as low pressure intrusions, as the solar radiation triggers migraine. The Canadian Climate Center study in 1981, they reported that migraines were most likely to occur on the days with falling pressure, with rising humidity, high winds, rapid temperature fluctuations. The effects of humidity. Humidity also has a very important impact on mortality, as it influences the ability of the human body to cool itself by sweating or perspiration. So this effects of the low humidity, they occur in the winter months, and it reduces stress on the nasopharynx and the trachea. Upper respiratory tract infections, bacterial, viral infection, all this can increase due to the viscosity of the bronchial mucus and reduced immunity. So high humidity also impacts human health. Infectious diseases. Infectious diseases are spread due to climate and weather changes. The WHO predicts that the vector-borne diseases, they will increase with climate change. Vectors are basically living organisms, and they can transmit the infections from the animals to the human beings and vice versa. Most of the vectors are the blood-sucking insects. They ingest the disease-producing microbes during a blood meal from an infected host. That could be a human or an animal, and later it will inject it into a new host during their subsequent blood meal. So mosquitoes are the best known disease vector. Others include ticks, the flies, sandflies, fleas, triautomite bugs, and also some freshwater aquatic snails. However, these diseases are steadily increasing as an indirect result of climate change. These diseases account for approximately 17% of all the infectious diseases and are highest in the tropical as well as the subtropical areas. Since 2014, major outbreak of such diseases such as it could be dengue, it is malaria, then chikungunya, then Zika virus, they have all affected the populations in different countries. So climate therefore is known to be a major environmental driver influencing the epidemiology. Weather conditions affect the survival, the reproduction rates of these vectors, their habitat suitability, distribution and also abundance. Further, climate change also impacts the development, the reproduction and the survival of the pathogens and the viruses inside the vectors also. Vector-borne viral diseases. We come on to the West Nile virus. So this was geographically, it originated in 1937 in Uganda in Africa. Then in 1990s, the outbreaks were observed in Israel and in Africa, and recently we have seen that these reports of West Nile virus were also noted in the Indian subcontinent. Culex is a vector and it transmits the virus through biting, and the Asian tiger mosquito, that is the Aedes albopictus, it is also a vector for this virus. The symptoms are, extreme myalgia, joint pains, fever, fatigue. It can also cause encephalitis and meningitis. And one child also, died due to this West Nile virus in Malappuram district in Kerala. So it is an arthropod-borne virus, an enveloped single-strand RNA virus of the genus Flavivirus in the family Flaviviridae. Prolonged warm seasons and also extended rainfall patterns. These are allowing these vectors and insects to survive longer. So there are some factors that impact the transmission and distribution of the virus and interactions between the pathogen, vector, vertebrate host and the environment. All these factors are important. Therefore, the weather conditions have direct and indirect influence on the weather competence, on the vector population, dynamics and also on the virus replication rate within the mosquito. Next is the dengue fever. This has also been observed as large outbreaks in the Asia Pacific region, and there are many species in the ecological web that can keep the mosquitoes away. But the use of pesticides, that is wiping out all these species, and they are allowing these kind of mosquitoes to flourish. They are also transmitted by the Aedes species of the mosquito, and they are highly sensitive to the environmental conditions. So the higher temperatures, they can reduce the time required for the virus replication and disseminate in the mosquito. This is known as the extrinsic incubation period. It must occur before the virus can reach the salivary gland of the mosquito to be infected to the humans. If the mosquito becomes infectious sooner due to warmer temperatures, it has a greater chance of infecting humans before it dies. The next is chikungunya. The name chikungunya comes from the African Kimukonde language meaning bent posture or to become contorted. Changing weather and the climate has also influenced the resurgence and the occurrence of the chikungunya virus. This was first reported in Tanzania in 1952. Then there have been epidemics reported in 2004 and it spread to the islands of the Indian Ocean, also in 2005. But also now in 2020, 2021 in India we have seen several of the chikungunya cases which have been affecting millions of people. So the medical community started taking notice in 2005 when it affected 1.4 million people in India and the French island of Réunion in the southwest Indian Ocean. So this chikungunya re-emergence, it depends on several factors, and scientists say that climate is an important factor. With drought and heavy rainfall events, these disease vectors will spread quickly and the vector-borne chikungunya prevalence is likely to increase with the possibility of becoming endemic globally. Nipah virus. For this, bats are the reservoirs, Pteropus. So this affects the livestock, economic loss among the farmers, and the World Health Organization reports that there are direct linkages to climate change, deforestation and the transmission of this Nipah virus. It was noticed in 1998 in Malaysia. The loss of natural habitat of the bats and the climate variability has affected the food requirement for the bat. So therefore, the bats are getting nearer to the human settlements, the human population, and that could be a factor and climate variability for the transmission of this virus. Vector-borne protozoan diseases includes malaria. This claims more lives globally worldwide than any disease. but still we are able to tackle malaria to a certain extent. The vector-borne disease is transmitted by the female Anopheles mosquito, and it is reported to be the most sensitive to long-term climate change. Excessive rainfall and humidity is reported to be the major environmental factor that enhances mosquito breeding and survival. The World Bank, this estimates that by the year 2050, the climate change will bring about 50% a higher probability of malaria in the previously unexposed regions. Tick and the flea-borne illnesses. Ticks are also responsible. For example, the Lyme disease is caused by ticks. So this also due to increasing temperatures, high levels of humidity, the Lyme disease is observed in different parts of the world. Tularemia, this is transmitted from rabbits to the humans. This is caused by a bacterium, Francisella tularensis. It's transmitted to humans through the flea or the tick bite. So they are saying that due to the warm and the humid climates, the climatologists predict that this disease can be prevalent. Climate change, wildlife habitat destruction are also some factors for the tick and the flea-borne disease transmission. Therefore, now that we have had a look into the infectious agents and their associations and linkages with weather and long-term climate and climatic changes, what is the future action that could be taken? We all know that climate variability affects health and well-being. Climate change introduces new pest, pathogen and disease emergence. Without a healthy ecosystem, drought and famine will increase and the diseases spread. When ecosystems change, the vector habitats change and subsequently the diseases spread. Therefore, it is important to address climate change and raise awareness of the close link between such change and diseases. Socio-economic factors such as the land use pattern, population growth and urbanization, migration and economic development, this also needs to be factored into the future risk assessment. We as individuals must help identify certain areas that are at greatest risk to climate change to help the decision makers and the policy makers prioritize protective action plans. In this way, we can support adaptation and mitigation of the climate change to build healthier and sustainable communities. Dear learners, I hope you have had a good understanding of this lecture. Thank you.